I work as an elementary school teacher. I'm a younger teacher. I know I still have a lot to learn about my profession, and I take my responsibility as a role model for our youth quite seriously. This happened a couple years ago now, and I am on the brink of insanity. I can't keep doing this. I see him everywhere now. He's the one you're scared of peering around the corner, but he never does. He's the one in the dark that looks too long, too gaunt, too tall to be a real person. You write him off as a pile of laundry lying in the dark, but he can see you looking at him. I know he can see me looking at him. About 2 years ago, I had my first kindergarten class. I was a fresh hire, and I wanted to really make an impact in the school and in these kids' lives. I had been student teaching, and really didn't feel connected to my students. And at that age, connection is the difference between listening and misbehavior. On the first day, all the kids arrived and were apprehensive of each other at first. But clearly there were some who had gone to preschool together, and they started to get along better. We did a short craft where the kids painted paper plates with their names on them. We hung them from the front of the desks they had all claimed, so I could learn all their names quickly and really foster some mutual respect. I noticed that there was a little girl sitting on her own, Ava, refusing to cooperate with the group. She looked tired, her cheeks were pale, and her head was usually on her crossed arms. As the day came to an end, the kids were funneling into the hall to be picked up or shipped off in a bus. I had seen Ava's parents drop her off in a hurry that morning, so I figured I could catch her parents as she left. I asked Ava if she was okay, if I walked to her mom's car with her. She just nodded and kept her head down. It really bothered me that Ava didn't want to have the kind of connection I wanted, so when Ava's mom came to pick her up, I asked her if Ava had been feeling well. I told her that she had been a little secluded from the group and dozing off in class. The mother looked like a bird of prey. I always find myself thinking about how hollow the space between her eye and cheekbones was. She was the very image of exhausted, with her gray hair tied tight in a bun and her eyelids hanging low on her charcoal eyes. She said to me, "Oh, Ava's just being silly recently. We're at that age where they start having nightmares." I asked what she meant, but she explained that she was in quite the hurry to get home, so I walked back inside and began to gather my things. After the first day, Ava continued to be a reclusive creature, and I really started to feel bad that she wasn't able to find anyone to play with her at recess. The only time I saw her try to interact with another human was the next day when she tapped on the shoulder of the student in front of her while waiting for the restroom. I think his name was Owen, and he turned around. She whispered something to him, and Ava started to cry. The boy had a look of somber confusion. It looked unnatural for a child of that age to look so skeptical of his surroundings, at himself. I sat Ava down and asked her about what happened, and she just cried. After about 15 inconsolable minutes, she started to sniffle and look at me as if she had just been torn in half. She didn't even need to say anything for all the hair on my body to stand on end. She asked me, "Do you dream about the man with the long fingers?" I don't really know how the rest of that school day went. I was pretty shaken up about the whole situation. When I got into my car, I remember checking the back seat more than once after hearing odd noises. There was never anyone there. The next day, Ava was gone. I gave her mom a call, but the line must have been busy. I tried 5 times before giving up. As I looked around the room, everyone seemed on edge about something. I think they could feel my apprehension, all their curious eyes watching me. I looked to Owen, his head on his desk, the last one to have seen Ava. As irrational as it was, I asked him if he knew where Ava could be. As he picked his head up off his crossed arms, he looked at me with eyes too old for his body. The circle under his eyes were dark and his eyelids drooped low. I stepped back and everyone jumped. I had forgotten how much these kids watched my every move. I was scaring them, their curious eyes turning to slight confusion and fear. I pulled Owen into the hall. I asked him what the matter was, and he told me. He just won't leave me alone. I asked him which of his friends it was. I know firsthand how nasty kids can be. He looked at me and told me, "No, the man in the clothes, with the big fingers," he said. "He won't stop looking at me. I can see his fingers." After that, I led him back to the room. I don't even really remember what BS I told him. The day ended too quickly and I got into my car to go home. I buckled my seatbelt and put the key in the ignition, but as I turned it, I heard an exhale. Not my own, but an exhale. As the car came to life, I processed the sound, like lungs emptied through nostrils. I looked in my mirror to the back seat, but it was empty. I know he was there. I didn't see him, but I know I brought him home with me that day. When I walked through the door of my house that day, the shadows were deeper than I knew them to be. The light seemed dimmer, and the dark seemed to gather in corners like pools of ink. I felt so watched. I saw the world the same way a scared kid would. Kicked my shoes off and sat on the couch, realizing that I was a lot more bothered about the whole thing than I had realized. I called my fiancé. He was busy, and our conversation was rushed. He told me he was sleeping at a close friend's and that he had to go. The brief respite from my own childlike fear had ended quickly, and his disinterest in me made the day somehow more messed up. As the sun set and I was getting ready to go to bed, I went around the house turning off all the lights. The big empty house creaking in the dark. I walked down the hall from the living room to our bedroom. As I passed the bathroom door, I saw him for the first time. He was squatting, his legs pulled up to his chest. His skin was tight and covered in boils. In the dark, it looked like he was a putrid blue-brown color. His arms crossed over his knees, and his hands tucked in behind them. He watched me move past the corridor, smiling a subtle smile. I saw this out of my periphery, but it was clear. I doubled back, and he was replaced with our overfilled hamper sitting in the dark. I flicked on the light and investigated. The room was certainly empty, and as I turned off the light on the way out, I saw in the mirror a dark gray-brown hand wrapped around the shower curtain. I turned the light back on, and it was gone. At this point, I had convinced myself that I was seeing things. Maybe I was tired and a little scared without my usual companionship in the house. I laid down to sleep with the TV on the Food Network. I always found it easier to sleep with the TV on, and so I fell asleep listening to Chopped. When I woke up, the clock said 2 a.m., and I turned around onto my other side to go back to sleep. My fiancé's pile of dirty laundry was taking up more space than usual, and I felt that childlike fear crawling down my spine. My eyes traced the familiar shape in the pile, his college t-shirt, a pair of jeans, and finally I found myself tracing a shape that wasn't at all familiar. 2 hands stuck out from the laundry, and from inside the pile I swear I saw 2 beady yellow eyes. Not glowing eyes. Dark eyes. Glossy eyes. I stared, paralyzed in fear. I didn't dare move. I stared hard, hoping that if I looked hard enough, that the relaxed hands sticking out of the pile would disappear as apparitions of my overactive imagination. I stared until the clock read 3 a.m. The hands stayed and the eyes began to rise. It took hours. It was 4 a.m. when I could start making out his grotesque skin in the barely present light from the TV. He was raising his head and I could see him clearly. I could see his too long face every time the screen showed a particularly bright scene. I could feel him watching me the whole time. At 5, I knew the sun would rise soon, but my eyes were locked on the fingers that had begun to twitch. At this, I jumped, but just slightly, still trying to feign sleep. The crooked, slight smirk that his too long mouth was twisted into became a wicked, beaming smile as the whole head cocked in a twitch and fell back into the laundry in an instant. The hands pulled themselves into the pile slowly and eventually disappeared. I had had enough. I quickly grabbed the baseball bat that I keep behind the headboard and in the slowly rising sun hit the pile of laundry harder than I've ever hit anything in my entire life. Laundry scattered around the room and he was nowhere. That was 2 years ago. I never saw Ava and Owen again after that. They told me that Ava choked on something in her sleep, and Owen fell out of bed. BS. I think he just didn't like a tattletale. He watches me every night now. It used to only be when I was alone, but now he knows I won't tell anyone, so he pushed the limit. Last night his hand was wrapped around my bedpost. I woke up to him wrapping the other hand around my ankle. I screamed and jumped and pulled my legs to me, and my fiancé woke up. The hands were gone, but the 2 long marks around my ankles are still there today. I'm scared to tell him about the man with the long fingers. I'm scared what he'd do if I said anything. He touched me last night so that I would break. He's tired of me. I'm about to tell my fiancé this whole story. I am terrified of what the long fingers will feel like on my skin. His hands were so rough.